I was recently having a conversation with somebody who is seeking help for their issues, and she has watched all my videos and she understands that there's a pattern going on and that she's stuck and she can't get out. And unfortunately, I think she's going to require dental integration for a variety of reasons. But she expressed her astonishment and frustration in not being able to explain to people what she's talking about, because they literally have no clue what she's talking about, because they're not thinking in patterns. And it's made me think a lot about, not because they're not smart, it has nothing to do with intelligence, it's what you've been exposed to or what you haven't been exposed to. And in regards to PRI in general, what people realize, physical therapists, strength and conditioning people, is people see things, but they don't have perspective for what they're seeing. They don't know what they're looking at. So asymmetry has been observed forever. We're constantly seeing asymmetries. What wasn't understood was that these asymmetries reflected a neuromuscular position, a position that our body likes to be in more than the other position. You need two, a right and a left. It likes to be in the right. So many of these physical signs that we're seeing, left shoulder's higher, right shoulder's lower, scapulas that are not sitting in the same position, one leg longer than the other. People were not realizing that what they were seeing was a body that's stuck in right stance phase of gait. Weight's on the right foot, left leg is swinging through the air. That's called right stance, left swing phase of gait. And humans are designed to be like that. But until it's pointed out to you, you don't know what you're looking at. You don't know what you don't know because no one ever pointed it out. And then someone's like, oh, this person's just stuck in right stance. And you have that epiphany like, oh my God, this is so simple. So a lot of people will have that epiphany. It just takes some time. They have to take seminars, and then eventually they might realize it immediately. They don't know how to fix it necessarily, but at least they see what they're looking at. But there's another epiphany that has to go on, and I talk about this quite often. The epiphany, or let's just say a change in consciousness that occurs from a more orthopedic-minded mindset to a more sensory-minded mindset. And from the beginning, Ron, who's the founder, he always used to say, and I never understood it until I understood it, you orthopedic-minded people have to become more sensory-minded. So it's just something I always kept in mind because he used to always say it. And then as I did this more and more, I started to understand it, and eventually, because of my life, the circumstances of my own life, it became obvious. So let me just explain what that means. Okay, so when you first start taking PRI seminars, you have the introductory seminars. You have Myokinematic Restoration, which is how the pelvis, the femur, the upper leg, and the lumbar spine, the lower spine, all kind of work together. That was my favorite course at that point. Then I had Postural Respiration, the second one, which is all about ribcage mechanics. I had no interest in that. Hated it. I didn't understand a word of it, but I stuck with it. It was hard. It's easier to understand at this point because they updated the manual, and it's just better explained, in my opinion. Struggled with that course, but I knew I had to know it. Pelvis I loved because I already knew I had pelvis issues, and I already understood the lower spine. So I love the pelvis because I had those SI joint issues and pelvis issues. And then there was another one, Pelvis Restoration on the bottom. And so this was 2014, 2014, 2015. And this Pelvis Restoration is all about the pelvic floor and then the inside of the pelvis, how the inside of the pelvis affects movement and everything else. When you're taking those three, you're still thinking muscles and bones, muscles and bones, muscles and bones. Most people who start with PRI, they take a while to advance past those three. And so for a long time, and even me, for a long time, you're still just thinking in muscles and bones. And you're thinking that this is PRI. It is PRI, but it's not all of PRI. Eventually, you take something called impingement and instability. And this is 2015 also. I was taking a lot at once. That is your first introduction to the more neurological and sensory aspect of PRI. And you're still thinking in muscles and bones, but now you're starting to realize, you know what, if you just sense something differently, if you sense the arch of your right foot or the heel of your left foot, you can make some pretty astounding changes. And so there you start to kind of have an understanding that things aren't what you thought they were. You're still thinking muscles and bones though, and that's going to last for a while. Then you advance. Now, some people never get past that point, and so they're stuck thinking that PRI is about muscles and bones. And again, it is, but this is where your consciousness changes. This is where you realize, so when you hit cervical revolution, 2015, this is the neck and the head, patterns of the head and the neck. You're not going to understand any of it in the beginning. I felt like I was in math class again, back in, high school. I've never been so lost in a seminar. I've taken it 4 times. The first time, it's like I didn't take it, except the fact that I was used as a test subject. Let me just point out then another step up, it would be postural visual integration. So this is the vision course, 2016. And then cranial resolution, which is their newest course, cranial resolution 2019. I took it in August. That's where you start to realize, or actually with cervical revolution, where you start to realize that this, if you want to say what is PRI about, it's this. It is about these. You have to have these in the right position. But we want these to be in the right position. We want the pelvis and the ribcage to be in the right position so that this neck doesn't have to do anything that the pelvis and the ribcage should be doing. If you don't have proper position of this pelvis and ribcage, you don't have this left-sided area stable. You're unstable. Who is going to make up for an unstable left side? This guy. And when this guy gets unstable, when this guy gets too stable to make up for instability from down low, that's where things start to go wrong for people. Me. Started from a very early age. When a neck can't move, can't rotate appropriately, it's usually limited to the left. It goes okay to the right. Side bending, limited, it goes further to the left than it does to the right. So it's usually limited to the right, and it goes all the way to the left. And then there's just tension in that neck. When this doesn't move, this is where things go wrong. If this thing doesn't move, this can't move properly, and this can't move properly, because all these big neck muscles that go from your chin, that move your jaw, neck muscles to the hyoid, which is right in here. These big SCMs that go to your sternum, that attach here and here, when those neck muscles get tight and they start pulling on your cranium, and they start pulling on your chest and lift it, you now lose complete position of this pelvis and this rib cage. You don't have diaphragms that are pumping anymore as your primary respiratory muscles. You're using your neck, you're using your low back, and you're dying. You're not dying, but you're going to be in a world of hurt. So, when you lose position of this pelvis and this rib cage, when you're all right-sided and you never get to the left, so you never close this left side, so the left side muscles weaken and can't stabilize the left side of your body, pelvis, rib cage, your neck will start to get overactive as a breathing muscle and to help stabilize you and help move you. And we don't want that. This neck, cervical revolution, it has to revolve freely, it has to be free to move, and when it doesn't, you can't breathe, your allergies are worse, you have skin issues, you get ringing in your ears, your vision changes, you get malocclusion, your teeth start doing weird things, your chin goes to the left or, God forbid, to the right, because you don't want that to happen. Me again. your back hurts, your neck hurts, your foot hurts, your left side is just tense, your body's tense. You got light sensitivity, you too much noise bothers you, you're just agitated, you're always stressed, you can't sleep, you can't breathe, you're a mouth breather. It's a freaking nightmare. So this is where PRI is at. Everything you learn in those first courses is to help keep these moving freely and breathing through that nose and having a visual system that can see equally to the left and to the right. That when you put your weight on your left leg and you look to the left, you don't start to freak out. And it happens. Put them on the right leg, yeah, no problem. Put on the left leg, ugh. I do it all the time with people. They get very uncomfortable, and if you are watching my video and I've worked with you and you've experienced that, feel free to comment, but not everybody watches these videos, but trust me, it's true. My brain didn't use my left eye for 40 freaking years. Now, I was top down, so my issues started from the top and worked their way down. Most people start from the bottom up, but either way, it can just all go together. So the important thing to realize is when you're learning it, you're learning pelvis first or rib cage first or at the same time. But that is just the beginning. All that stuff is important to keep this stuff, this sensory stuff, what you're seeing, what you're biting on. You know, if walk in the woods, you're nice and calm, you're walking. What are you walking for? You're probably walking because you want general health, but then you hear a sound. That is what this is for, to orient your body, to orient your sensory perception to detect things. This is what it's about. What you are intending, what you want to do, what your desire is, that's what movement is for. It's not just random. Generally, movement is probably to get food, but it's also to check to see what's coming behind you, orienting your body to get straight, because that's where we need to go. It's all about this. Yes, it's about this, and yes, this has to come first. You do have to get proper position of the pelvis and the rib cage, but again, this stuff has to happen to get breathing to occur, to stabilize on the left side, so your lower body is nice and stable and sensing the ground, so that this can relax and move and side bend and do everything it needs to do, so this head doesn't have to tilt back and start pressing on the vagus nerve and all this important circuitry back here. And so this cranium can revolve, side bend, breathe through the nose, not through the mouth, because once you become a mouth breather, you're going to be using your neck, and that just contributes to the chain of events. So you can be seeing what you need to see, so you can orient your body in the position that it needs to go without compensation. And if you followed that, and I know I went a lot of different places with it, you have a better understanding of what this really is about, and why, if your only courses were pelvis and rib cage related, you're not getting the full picture. It's just that. Now, remember, for a lot of people, you don't necessarily have to know about how all this stuff works. If you get really good at this, and the people that you're dealing with aren't too complicated, because I don't touch anybody's neck to get somebody's neck to move freely. I change what they're sensing, and I change the strength of the left side of the body. That will let a neck start moving. I don't touch a neck. Necks don't just stop moving. They don't get tight because. They get tight from instability somewhere else. So they tighten in the neck to preserve this horizontal line of sight, to preserve all this important circuitry. That's why it gets tight, and that's usually coming from down low. So sense the floor properly. I get necks to relax by having people sense the floor differently. Better pair of shoes. Can they feel certain parts of their feet? They don't know they can't feel it until I ask them whether they can feel it. And they say, well, that's a weird question. No one has ever asked me. And now they start feeling it. I retest their neck, and their neck has let go. That's it. You don't have to touch the neck. Now, if someone has a cranial pattern like I did, then it gets a little trickier, not gonna lie. But most people don't have that. So you can have outstanding results just by knowing the pelvis and the rib cage. and some I&I, some neurological left heel, right arch sensory information, you can do a lot with those courses. But I believe in the future, more and more people are going to be these people who their issues can't be resolved until you understand how to get these moving properly. Because some people, you can do all the myokin, the pelvis exercise and the ribcage exercises, or abs, whatever you want to call it, and it's still not changing up here because the pattern up here can't be inhibited, can't be turned off simply through these methods because they are major sensory issues. Could be teeth, could be vision, could be a number of things. And I think that's only going to increase because I don't see that in the future. I don't see any decrease in tension. I see it in younger people. They are so stressed out. Anxiety levels are sky high. The way we live, the amount of sitting that we do, the amount of screens that we stare at, it's just increasing tension overall. And more tension builds up, and you're going to have more and more of this. The more sedentary we become, the more we stare at screens, the more close-up work we do, the worse our sensory system becomes, and the more sensory jumbled we become, the more you get stuck up here, and that's a bad news. So I think if you're doing PRI, this is your objective, to learn about this, because this regulates this. Although this also can regulate that, but if something is going wrong up here, again, you can do all the work you want down here, but it may not stick. So it is kind of a top-down system in terms of hierarchy, in terms of what the most powerful parts are, is this, but it's fewer people that need this. 70% are these types of people, and then maybe 30% are these types of people. But in reality, we're all these types of people. It's just where the emphasis has to be will change for certain people, depending on who you're working with. So that's kind of how I learned it. That's kind of how it's presented, the primary courses and the secondary courses. But this is where life happens. And when this is locked up, and unfortunately a lot of people still don't understand this aspect of it, if this is locked up, the stuff down here is never going to work properly. But getting this stuff working properly can conceivably unlock the stuff up here if you know what you're doing. Complicated video, I understand, but I just wanted to throw that out there, and maybe if one or two people get it and they have that, oh wow, that aha moment, it will be worth it. So have a great day.